little change, you may conclude that your inner movement has been imaginary or insignificant. I tell you tonight that the opposite is true. Every lasting transformation begins where no one else can see it. A change in circumstances is merely the final expression of a change that first occurred in consciousness. The outer world announces what the inner man has already accepted. When I say that the universe is telling you your old life is over, I am not speaking of a supernatural voice making predictions from somewhere beyond you. The universe is not a distant ruler passing judgment upon your worthiness. What you call the universe is the world of expression. It is consciousness made visible. It reflects the state you occupy, the identity you accept, and the expectations you repeatedly call natural. Your former life is losing its foundation because you are beginning to withdraw your belief from the state that sustained it. That state may still present its evidence. It may remind you of former disappointments. It may point toward current limitations. It may use memory, appearances, and the opinions of others to persuade you that nothing can truly change. But evidence has no creative authority of its own. The power belongs to the meaning you give it and the identity from which you respond. Your old life does not conclude only when every familiar condition has disappeared. Its true conclusion arrives when you stop allowing those conditions to define who you are. This distinction is everything. You may still see remnants of lack, while no longer accepting yourself as one who is destined to lack. You may still face uncertainty, without identifying yourself as helpless. You may encounter a delay, without returning to the consciousness of permanent waiting. You may remember what happened without making history the author of your future. The physical arrangement can remain briefly, while its inner cause is being abandoned. A building may continue to stand for a time after it has ceased to serve its former purpose. Furniture remains in the rooms. The walls preserve old marks. From the street, nothing appears different. Yet the owner has already decided to leave. The house is no longer home. This is where many of you stand tonight. You have not yet moved completely into the new life, but your former state no longer feels like home. Do not mistake that discomfort for failure. It is evidence that consciousness has begun to outgrow an identity that once seemed permanent. Now you must understand what is meant by abundance. The word is often reduced to money, possessions, or visible success. These may be included, but abundance is far greater than any single object. Abundance is the consciousness of sufficiency. It is an inner condition in which support, opportunity, love, purpose, wisdom, and increase no longer feel foreign. In the abundant state, receiving does not produce guilt. Giving does not produce fear. Rest does not feel dangerous. Growth does not require constant desperation. You do not assume that every valuable thing must be purchased through exhaustion. You no longer expect peace to be interrupted the moment you begin to trust it. You cease treating good fortune as an exception that can vanish at any time. The question is not merely whether more can enter your life. The deeper question is whether more can feel natural to the identity you occupy. Money can arrive in the hands of one who remains inwardly poor. Love can appear while the recipient continues to expect abandonment. Recognition can come to someone who still feels invisible. Success can visit a consciousness that is convinced it does not belong there. When the inner identity remains unchanged, the new condition often feels unstable. It may be feared, mismanaged, rejected, or unconsciously returned to the level that feels familiar. For this reason, preparation for abundance is not passive waiting. You are preparing the inner ground. You are becoming capable of receiving without suspicion, holding without fear, managing without confusion, and sharing without self-destruction. Your former life was created through more than external events. Beneath those events lived a network of assumptions. You may have accepted the belief that nothing comes easily to you. You may have considered yourself the one who must carry every burden alone. Money may have seemed difficult to obtain and impossible to keep. Love may have appeared uncertain. Rest may have produced guilt. Opportunity may have felt reserved for people with greater talent, stronger connections, or better fortune. Such beliefs are rarely announced in clear sentences. They operate silently, shaping perception before you are aware that a choice has been made. Consider the man who expects to be overlooked. When an opportunity appears, he hesitates. If another individual receives praise, he interprets it as evidence that recognition is scarce. During an important conversation, he over-explains because he believes his value must be proven. He may work constantly, yet the labor is organized around the expectation of being ignored. Now consider the woman who assumes that love is unstable. A delayed reply becomes a warning. A quiet evening feels threatening. She studies changes in tone and searches for evidence of withdrawal. In trying to preserve connection, she may abandon her own dignity. Neither individual is responding only to the present event. Each is reacting from an established state. The world then reflects the behavior, decisions, and relationships that naturally grow from that state. This is why changing circumstances, without changing identity, often produces a new version of an old experience. You may enter another workplace while carrying the consciousness of being undervalued. You may begin a new relationship while expecting rejection. You may earn more while remaining afraid of money. You may move to another city and discover that your old inner conversations arrived before you. Environment matters, but it does not possess the power to give you a new self. Another individual cannot permanently give you the identity you refuse to accept. Possession cannot settle a question that consciousness continues to reopen. The source must be addressed. An assumption is not an eternal truth. It is a position of consciousness that has been accepted often enough to feel natural. Because it feels natural, you call it reality. Yet naturalness can be transferred. The identity of scarcity became familiar through repeated occupation. The identity of abundance can become familiar through the same law. You are not imprisoned by the length of time you have worn a state. A coat does not become part of the body because it has been worn for 20 years. It may be heavy. It may contain memories. Others may recognize you by it. Still, it can be removed. Your old identity is not your skin. It is a garment of consciousness. Tonight, you may choose another. The challenge is not that the new identity is unavailable. The challenge is that the former one is known intimately. Human beings often return to what is familiar, even when familiarity is painful. Financial tension may feel more believable than financial order. Inconsistent affection may seem more recognizable than peaceful love. Constant activity may feel more responsible than calm, directed work. The unknown can appear dangerous, even when the unknown contains what you have been asking to receive. Do not condemn this tendency. See it clearly. Consciousness moves most naturally toward what it has repeatedly experienced. Therefore, you must provide it with a new experience. This is the purpose of imagination. Imagination is not idle fantasy. It is the faculty through which you enter a state before the physical senses confirm it. Through imagination, you experience the new identity from within. You do not look at prosperity as a distant observer. You see through the eyes of one whose financial life has become stable and orderly. You do not merely think about love. You feel the settled quality of being securely loved. You do not admire success from the outside. You occupy the consciousness of one whose work is valuable and whose contribution is received. The act does not need to be dramatic. In fact, the most convincing inner scenes are often ordinary. Imagine an evening after your responsibilities have been handled. You review your affairs without tension. Nothing extraordinary occurs. There is simply order. Imagine closing your computer after meaningful work. Your effort has direction. Tomorrow is clear. The day no longer ends in confusion and self-judgment. Imagine sitting with someone you love. No grand declaration is being made. You feel safe enough to be silent. Connection does not need to be tested. These scenes possess power because they imply that fulfillment has become part of everyday life. The first arrival of a desire may produce excitement. Continued possession produces naturalness. Naturalness is the quality you seek. Do not strain to generate intense emotion. An identity is not accepted through emotional violence. Think of your own name. You do not repeat it with passion in order to keep it. You do not check each morning to determine whether it is still yours. There is no debate. You know. The fulfilled state must gradually assume this quiet character. Of course your life is supported. Of course your work has value. Of course peace belongs in your experience. Of course increase can be received and managed wisely. This is not arrogance. It is inward acceptance. You may ask, if the state has changed, why do the old conditions remain? Because the outer world is often the delayed expression of previous states. Your present environment contains the results of past interpretations, decisions, actions, agreements, and habits. A new assumption does not always erase those results overnight. There may still be obligations to address. A conversation may remain unfinished. Financial matters may require practical attention. Skills may need to be developed. Certain consequences must be handled responsibly. Neville never requires you to deny the visible world or neglect intelligent action. The instruction is more precise. Respond to facts without allowing facts to define your being. A low balance describes a current figure. It does not define your permanent relationship with money. A rejection records one decision. It does not proclaim universal unworthiness. A delay indicates that something has not yet appeared. It does not prove that movement has ceased. Handle the condition. Do not become the condition. This is the discipline required during transition. The old world may continue speaking through appearances. Your work is to refuse its invitation to become the former self again. Imagine a seed beneath the soil. Nothing visible moves for a time. The surface appears undisturbed, yet an entire process has begun. The seed opens. Roots form. Life takes direction in darkness before the first evidence reaches the light. No intelligent gardener digs up the seed each morning to determine whether it has kept its promise. Such interference would disturb the very process he wishes to observe. Your assumption is the seed. Faithfulness provides the condition. The physical world will eventually reveal what has taken root, but you must not destroy the new state through constant inspection. Many of you imagine abundance at night and interrogate your circumstances the following morning. You look at the account. You read the message. You examine the reactions of others. Then you ask the visible world for permission to continue believing. This gives yesterday the authority to cancel what you chose today. Do not consult old evidence when selecting a new identity. Evidence reports what has been. Consciousness determines what shall become. The earliest signs of transformation may not resemble miraculous events. A new life often begins through a response that would have been impossible for the former self. You may calmly refuse an offer that undervalues you. A conversation you once avoided becomes necessary and clear. Instead of sending another anxious message, you preserve your dignity. You begin organizing what fear taught you to neglect. Help is accepted without shame. Work is completed without the old need to prove your right to exist. Rest becomes part of wise action rather than a reward for collapse. These choices may appear ordinary, but they reveal a new center of identity. You are no longer seeking instructions from the state you have left. A common mistake is to declare a new desire while continuing to think from the old self. You desire prosperity, but allow scarcity to decide what is possible. You ask for love while abandonment interprets every silence. You seek visibility, but permit unworthiness to determine when you speak. You want freedom, while guilt controls your relationship with rest. A new life cannot be built from the instructions of an expired identity. At some point, loyalty must change. You have always been faithful to a state. Every repeated inner conversation is an act of faithfulness. Every habitual interpretation confirms a chosen position. Every emotional reaction reveals the identity that has been consulted. Until now, you may have been faithful to struggle. You may have trusted the expectation of disappointment more deeply than the possibility of support. You may have accepted fear as wisdom and tension as responsibility. Tonight, choose a new allegiance. Become faithful to the consciousness of sufficiency. Return repeatedly to the knowledge that you are supported. Accept that your work can be recognized and rewarded. Allow secure love to become more believable than emotional uncertainty. Welcome peace as a natural atmosphere rather than a brief interruption. The former self does not need to be hated. Condemnation keeps you emotionally connected to what you claim to reject. Look upon that identity with understanding. It was formed through experiences, interpretations, and attempts to remain safe. Perhaps overwork once earned approval. Control may have reduced uncertainty. Remaining quiet may have protected you from criticism. Accepting less may have seemed preferable to losing everything. Those habits had a purpose. They no longer need to govern. Say inwardly, "You were a state I occupied. You were never the totality of my being. I release you now, and I no longer ask you to guide my future." Release without conflict. A former state loses power when your attention, belief, and emotional loyalty are withdrawn. This is also the deeper meaning of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not limited to releasing anger toward another. It includes releasing the identity you formed around what occurred. You may forgive betrayal while continuing to expect betrayal. You may forgive rejection while remaining the rejected self. You may cease blaming another while still building your future around the wound. Ask yourself what you decided about your identity when the painful event occurred. Did you conclude that you were unlovable? Did you decide that success was unsafe? Did you assume that trust always leads to pain? Did you accept that your needs did not matter? The event belongs to history. The conclusion remains active only through present consent. You may remember the past without living from it. Abundance becomes available when survival is no longer treated as your natural state. The survival mind asks whether there will be enough. Abundant consciousness considers how available resources may be used wisely. Scarcity holds tightly because it expects no renewal. Abundance manages carefully while remaining open to circulation and increase. Fear treats one opportunity as the final chance. A secure identity understands that no single door contains the whole future. This does not mean careless spending, reckless decisions, or blind optimism. Abundance has nothing to do with avoiding responsibility. It is order without fear. It is generosity guided by wisdom. It is ambition without desperation. It is discipline without self-punishment. It is rest without guilt. You prepare for such a life by becoming inwardly compatible with it. If financial stability is desired, begin to value order now. Review what needs attention. Seek qualified advice when necessary. Learn what fear once encouraged you to avoid. If meaningful work is desired, develop the skill and complete the task before you. Do not wait for recognition before treating your contribution with respect. If secure love is desired, cease calling inconsistency romantic. Speak honestly. Establish standards that reflect the identity of one who is worthy of mutual care. Preparation does not mean abundance is distant. Preparation is abundance beginning to express itself through present behavior. A new state changes what feels acceptable. For this reason, some relationships and environments may shift. Those who were comfortable with your lack of boundaries may resist your clarity. Someone who relied upon your insecurity may feel unsettled when you no longer seek constant approval. Do not turn this principle into superstition. Not every disagreement proves that a relationship must end. Not every closed door carries a hidden reward. Not every loss should be praised without reflection. Use discernment. Some relationships require an honest conversation. Others need new boundaries. Certain connections may deepen, while others reveal that they were sustained entirely by the old identity. Your task is not to decide who must disappear. Ask instead which state you occupy when you meet them. Are you begging for recognition? Are you silencing yourself to preserve temporary peace? Are you attempting to rescue everyone in order to feel necessary? Are you calling confusion love because clarity might require a difficult choice? Change the identity from which you relate. The relationship will then reveal its true capacity. During this transition, human emotion will continue. Fear may visit. Doubt may speak. Sadness may arise. Do not treat these experiences as proof that the new state has failed. A state is not a requirement to feel one emotion at every hour. Courage can exist while fear passes through the body. Worthiness remains available during disappointment. Trust can be chosen in the presence of uncertainty. Ask whether the emotion is visiting or governing. You do not need to become someone who never feels discomfort. Become one who no longer mistakes discomfort for destiny. Persistence means returning. When an old reaction appears, pause and return. When familiar evidence challenges you, respond wisely and return. When the former story begins repeating in your mind, notice it and return. The power lies not in never leaving the state, but in refusing to establish a permanent home outside it. Now choose one area of your life. Do not attempt to transform everything in a single act. Bring to mind the matter that presently carries the greatest emotional weight. What identity have you occupied there? Name it honestly. I have assumed that I must struggle for every opportunity. I have believed that money cannot remain with me. I have identified myself as one who is never fully chosen. I have treated my work as invisible. I have lived as though everything depended upon me alone. Then examine how this identity has shaped your behavior. Has it caused you to accept less? Did it make you avoid necessary action? Have you overworked, over-explained, or remained silent? Did you pursue people who offered uncertainty because certainty felt unfamiliar? Observe without blame. You are locating the state so that you may leave it. Say quietly, "This was an identity I accepted. It is not my permanent self. From this moment, I no longer return to it for instructions." Now select a new identity. Keep the statement clear. My financial life is stable, orderly, and sufficient. My work is valuable and appropriately rewarded. I give and receive consistent love. I am supported by wise relationships and meaningful opportunities. Peace, purpose, and increase are natural in my life. Choose one statement rather than repeating many. Then allow an ordinary scene to form. Imagine that the desired condition has existed long enough to become familiar. See yourself at the end of a productive day, closing your computer with quiet satisfaction. Feel yourself reviewing your finances with calm attention. Hear the voice of someone you love, speaking with warmth and consistency. Experience the relief of knowing that your responsibilities have been handled. Do not watch yourself from a distance. Enter the body of the fulfilled self. See through your own eyes. Hear from your present position. Touch the object before you. Notice the absence of the old tension. There is nothing to prove. No urgent question remains. You are not waiting for life to begin. This is your life. Remain in the scene until it begins to feel familiar. Then ask a practical question. What action naturally belongs to this identity? The answer may be simple. Complete the application. Review the agreement. Organize the finances. Finish the proposal. Request clear communication. Decline what requires self-betrayal. Develop the skill. Seek appropriate professional guidance. Accept support. Rest before making a decision that should not be made in panic. Do not attempt to force the entire path into view. Take the step that belongs to the present state. Action has a proper place. It expresses identity. It should not be required to create identity. Do not act in order to escape the old life. Act because you no longer belong to it. This principle will protect you from carrying the former consciousness into a new environment. A new job cannot rescue the identity that expects to be undervalued. A relationship cannot permanently satisfy the self that anticipates abandonment. A larger income cannot settle the mind that is organized around fear and disorder. Change the state first. Then let the new condition become its expression. Ask not only what you wish to receive, consider who you will be when it arrives. How will you manage increase? What will guide your decisions? How will your abundance serve beyond immediate pleasure? Can you enjoy money without worshipping it? Can recognition be received without becoming dependent upon applause? Can you love deeply without abandoning yourself? Can you build success without turning exhaustion into a virtue? Abundance joined with wisdom becomes stewardship. It allows you to receive more without being possessed by more. Tonight before you sleep, enter this new consciousness deliberately. Let the body become quiet. Set aside tomorrow for a few moments. You do not need to solve every problem before resting. Return to your ordinary scene. The former life is behind you, not because every physical trace has disappeared, but because it is no longer the home of your identity. Look back upon the old state as you might look upon a house where you once lived. You remember the rooms. You understand what happened there. You may feel compassion for the one who occupied them, but the keys have been returned. You do not live there now. Say within yourself, I no longer allow fear to direct my decisions. The past does not predict my future. Struggle is not my natural condition. My worth does not require exhaustion. Abundance is becoming familiar to me. Choose the statement that feels most important. Let it become more than language. Feel the state it describes. Then allow sleep to receive you as the new identity. Do not fall asleep waiting to be rescued. Sleep as one who has already crossed the inward threshold. When morning comes, resist the habit of immediately asking yesterday who you are. Before reading messages, checking figures, or reviewing obligations, remember the state you selected. Carry it into the day. The old reaction may return. That does not mean the old life has regained authority. An invitation is not a command. Pause. Ask how the fulfilled self would respond now. The answer may involve patience, clear speech, continued effort, a firm refusal, or the willingness to receive help. Each new response confirms that transformation is underway. The clearest sign of a new life is not a mysterious number or an emotional high. It is the moment when the old reaction remains available, yet you no longer choose it. Fear speaks, but it is not obeyed. The familiar pattern invites you back, but you recognize that you do not live there. As this continues, the visible world begins to reorganize. Your standards change. Decisions become clearer. Energy is no longer scattered across endless attempts to prove your value. Different opportunities become visible because you are now capable of recognizing them. Those around you respond to a self that no longer requests the former treatment. When the outer result appears, it may look fortunate to others. To you, it will feel natural. You will recognize it as the physical confirmation of a state already accepted. The universe did not randomly select you for abundance. It reflected the consciousness you presented to it. When the state changed, the reflection could no longer remain as it was. My friends, the old life loses its power when you stop asking it who you are. It fades when yesterday's evidence is no longer used as today's identity. Its story ends when suffering is no longer considered proof of worth. Consciousness begins the movement. The visible world becomes the final witness. Prepare inwardly. Let your thoughts, standards, decisions, and actions belong to the new identity. Make room for receiving. Learn to manage wisely. Treat peace as natural. Allow abundance to become ordinary in imagination before it becomes obvious in experience. Then live from that state. Build from it. Work from it. Give from it. Rest within it. You are not waiting for abundance to save you from lack. You are withdrawing your identity from lack. The former life survived through an old agreement about who you were. That agreement can be ended tonight. There is no need to wrestle with every outer condition. Change the root. The root is consciousness. Your reactions, decisions, and actions grow from it. The visible life is the fruit. Once the root is renewed, the branches cannot continue growing in their former direction forever. Do not ask when the new life will begin. Ask whether you are still willing to speak, choose, and react as the self whose story you have decided to leave. Release that identity with compassion. You no longer need to struggle in order to deserve. You no longer need to chase in order to be chosen. You no longer need to prove what consciousness has already accepted. Enter the state in which support, sufficiency, purpose, and meaningful increase feel natural. Your old life is over when you cease returning to it within yourself. The new life begins when abundance no longer feels like a distant miracle, but like the natural atmosphere of who you are. If these words represent your decision tonight, say quietly, "I no longer live from the old state." Allow the statement to settle. Do not use it as a wish. Accept it as your present choice. The old house is behind you. The new state is your home. And from that state, your world will respond. Good evening, my friends. This is Neville Lectures. I'll see you in the next video.